Welcome back to another in our series of the great chapters in the Bible. Our chapter today is Exodus chapter 20. Exodus chapter 20, the 10 Commandments. We'll begin reading in verse 1. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children, to the third and to the fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son, or your daughter, your male servant, or your female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbor's. Now when all the people saw the thunder and the flashes of lightning, and the sound of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking, the people were afraid and trembled. And they stood far off and said to Moses, You speak to us, and we will listen. But do not let God speak to us, lest we die. Moses said to the people, Do not fear, for God has come to test you, that the fear of him may be before you, that you may not sin. The people stood far off, while Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. And the Lord said to Moses, Thus you shall say to the people of Israel, You have seen for yourselves that I have talked with you from heaven. You shall not make gods of silver to me with you. Nor shall you make for yourself gods of gold. An altar of earth you shall make for me, and the sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and your peace offerings, your sheep and your oxen. In every place where I cause my name to be remembered, I will come to you and bless you. If you make me an altar of stone, you shall not build it of hewn stones, for if you wield your tool on it, you profane it. And you shall not go up by steps to my altar, that your nakedness be not exposed on it. As a boy, I loved baseball. I could spew names and facts and numbers with reckless abandon. I wasn't alone. Many a baseball fan could do the very same things. There were numbers that could be called out, and every fan knew what they meant, like 714, or 2,130, 511, or 60, 4,191, or 406. These and more had significant meaning. Now, for a Jewish child growing up, if you called out the number 603,550, they could tell you that it was the number of male Israelites 20 years and up that came out of Egypt under Moses. Or 613. That was the number of laws that an Israelite was required to keep. 12 would be the number of tribes. 10 will always be the commandments given to Moses on Mount Sinai. The 10 Commandments. So sacred were these words that God himself wrote them on the tablets. In fact, twice God had to do this because Moses broke the first set, having come down the mountain to discover the Israelites engaged in idolatrous ways. So rare was God's handwriting that only the tablets and Jesus himself writing on the dust in the New Testament are the only two times recorded that God wrote. And by the way, we aren't specifically told who wrote on that wall in Daniel 6, by the way. These tablets given to Moses were to be in the ark of the tabernacle. Later in Exodus 25:16 we read, "And you shall put into the ark the testimony that I will give you." The writer of the book of Hebrews confirms this in Hebrews 9:3-4. Behind the second curtain was the second section called the Most Holy Place, having the golden altar of incense and the Ark of the Covenant covered on all sides with gold, in which was a golden urn holding the manna, and Aaron's staff that budded, and the tablets of the covenant. I use a term from time to time referred to as the gestalt of something, meaning the whole is worth more than the sum of its parts. That is to say, individually, the parts of something have worth. Yet when seen as a whole, the value far exceeds what those parts are individually. I believe a valid case can be made for that which we have here in the Ten Commandments. Each law within the 10 is important. Yes, it's priceless. Still, the whole of the 10 together are beyond priceless, if that were possible. These 10 together sum up man's relationship to God and to his fellow man. From these 10 as the central focus, all other aspects of the law come forth. It is apparent as one looks at these, then, that they can be separated into two parts. The first 4 relate to God and the last 6 to man. That even this was evident in the way men saw them through the ages. Paul makes this statement in his letter to the Romans in Romans 13:8-10. "Owe no one anything except to love each other, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. For the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in this word. You shall love your neighbor as yourself." Love does no wrong to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. I'm pretty sure that's not what the people of Israel were thinking there at the foot of the mountain here in Exodus 20 about how much God loves them. For we read, "Now when all the people saw the thunder and the flashes of lightning and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking, the people were afraid and trembled, and they stood far off, and said to Moses, 'You speak to us, and we will listen, but do not let God speak to us, lest we die.'" The writer of Hebrews also relates how fearsome that sight was in Hebrews 12:18-21. "For you have not come to what may be touched, a blazing fire and darkness and gloom and a tempest, and the sound of a trumpet and a voice whose words made the hearers beg that no further messages be spoken to them. For they could not endure the order that was given. If even a beast touches the mountain, it shall be stoned. Indeed, so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, 'I tremble with fear.'" Still, love is at the heart of the 10 Commandments. A loving God gives his children rules not to make life hard, not to set expectations impossible to live up to, but to give them a full life. Far too often, rules and laws and regulations are viewed with contempt and disdain towards lawmakers and authorities. However, if you think living in a country filled with laws is hard, try living in a lawless one. In the same way, as a parent, can you imagine a household and family with no laws or expectations? Sadly, there are countries and families that exist under lawless or near lawless conditions. In the United States, even today, there are efforts to tear down and remove any reference to the 10 Commandments from public view. While the reasoning may be given as separation of church and state, one need not dig very deep to find at the heart is a rejection of God and his rule in the lives of people and nations. Although as a system of justification we are no longer bound by the law, still these 10 Commandments serve as a reminder that God has declared that there is right and wrong in the world. There is sin. These did not remedy sin, only identify it. Jesus did not come to die to remove rules and law, but to remedy that which the law could not do. In our next in the series of great chapters, we'll look at what Jesus identifies as the heart of several of the commandments in his Sermon on the Mount. Have you read that great sermon? Well, join us tomorrow And let's take a look at that great chapter in the New Testament.